Danny Cevallos joins us with more. Danny, good morning. All right, this is a big one to unpack.
Yes.
But you're going to do it for us. Tell us the arguments on both sides and how this all relates to that Voting Rights Act.
Normally, when a case gets to the Supreme Court, you have what's called a circuit split. So an appeals court in California disagrees with an appeals court in Michigan, for example. This is different. In this case, the split is within the same state of Louisiana. And what happened is one district court decided one thing, the other district court decided the other on this exact issue. But the other tale here is the Constitution versus the Voting Rights Act. In other words, the Voting Rights Act prevents or prohibits redrawing district lines to disadvantage minorities. But meanwhile, over at the Constitution, you can't, under the Equal Protection Clause, favor one group over another group, and that includes race. So that is really what's percolating in this case, is whether the Voting Rights Act, or how to reconcile the Voting Rights Act, which to some degree does look at race, with the Equal Protection Clause, which says thou shalt never advantage one race over another, or really any group of a protected class. And that's what happened here. In a way, this case should be very simple. The court decided an almost identical case 2 years ago and required Alabama to redraw its district lines so that it had a more proportional minority-majority district. It should be the exact same decision here. However, as we were talking about earlier, Justice Kavanaugh suggested that the Voting Rights Act's protections in another decision should not last forever. So the question is, what is forever?
And that's the question. How could this specific court approach this case? What are some of the precedents you expect them to be looking at?
Probably Milligan. 2 years ago, the court decided an almost identical issue. And even Louisiana, the state of Louisiana, admits that the issue is essentially the same. The only issue to be decided, really, is this Western District of Louisiana arrived at a conclusion that, well, wait a minute. Even though the Voting Rights Act is a statute, the Constitution trumps, because what we see here is treating different groups differently. So to some degree, the Supreme Court may reconcile the Voting Rights Act with the Constitution. But since we saw an almost identical decision 2 years ago in Alabama, and since the court has already somewhat weighed in, allowing Louisiana to use these districts in the 2024 election, if you're a betting person, I would go with the court deciding consistently with Milligan. Which would mean what? That the map stays as it's now been redrawn. Exactly, that the map stays as it's redrawn with an additional minority-majority district. In other words, disallowing racial gerrymandering and increasing the number of districts with minority majorities, in other words, black majorities, because Louisiana's population is 1/3 black. So the idea that they have one district that with a black majority seems a little fishy. I mean, either way, implications here, because these types of conversations and questions come up across the country. By the way, I'm so glad you brought that up, because this is a recurring issue that comes up a lot. We saw it with affirmative action. And the idea being that, look, if you have these laws that are passed with the idea of helping minorities, do they run afoul of the Constitution's Equal Protection Clause, which has long prohibited treating different groups differently? And courts have had to reconcile that, and they've gone both ways. Danny Cevallos, thank you very much.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app, or follow us on social media.